Hi there and welcome to Fluffy Jellyfish. Gamora's empty enclosure has been sat on my shelf looking sad and empty for the past few weeks. I upgraded her into an Exo Terra a few months ago because I wanted to constantly have life flourishing within this enclosure, so I think it's time for a new enclosure upgrade. This time round, I've decided to make the enclosure fully bioactive, with the inclusion of live plants, a full cleanup crew, and a handmade living background. I did a lot of research in the run up to this build, and I'm pretty confident that I can make it happen, so let's see how it goes. My first step was to hit the sketchbook. Because I wasn't quite sure exactly what I wanted, I decided to have a little draw around and play with my ideas. I worked through a few different ideas and eventually settled on something that I really liked, and drew that up into this slightly bigger drawing. I'll leave you with this little time lapse of the drawings that I created. After taking everything out of Gamora's old enclosure and cleaning up a little bit, my first step was to work on the background, and that meant expanding foam. Enjoy some of this expanding foam ASMR? So as you might have guessed, I've never used expanding foam before. This was my first attempt, and I don't really know what I'm doing. But I think I managed to make it work, and it turned out okay. What I was trying to do is add on these two plant pots onto my background so I could plant plants into them, and just to give it a little more texture and a little more depth for the mantis to climb on. I must say, it was a pretty satisfying process. I will have to use expanding foam in the future just because I enjoyed putting it on and seeing it grow. It was, yeah, a good fun material, so hopefully I'll be able to make more enclosures like this in the future where I can make more backgrounds like this because it's good fun. The next step after my expanding foam hardened and cured was to cut it back. I did end up using a little bit more than I needed, so there was quite a lot to cut back. And I just carved this out with a normal kitchen knife, as you can see. That's pretty flush. Oh no. Oh well. All these pieces I will save and probably make something out of them. I feel bad about wasting anything, so I will save these little bits and maybe turn them into bits of jewellery or something. I am one of those people. Random extra bit. So, first, I'm just gonna like randomly just sort of feel it out. That's quite cool. And here's a little bit more ASMR for you, this time carving style. I really like these noises when it's sped up. It sounds bizarre and wonderful. I really quite enjoyed this process as well. Carving things out was great fun. Again, I really want to use expanding foam in the future because doing this was so satisfying. I'd highly recommend you make stuff out of expanding foam and carve it back. It's good fun. It was also really easy to do, and since I'm a first timer to this kind of process, I would definitely recommend it to anyone starting out trying to do this. It made things much simpler for me to be able to do, and I could really start to see results quite quickly. So yeah, I would definitely recommend this for any beginners. It's an easy process to do. I'm quite pleased with that bottom one. I think it looks pretty good. I'm just going to move on to the top one. And that should sit quite nicely in my base, I think. Or as a, you know, on the base. The stock is surprisingly easy to work with, and I'm really enjoying that. I'll definitely be using this in the future to make projects with like this. It's been really easy to carve, as you can see, and although I used a bit too much when I first did it, I have learned for the future not to use quite as much expanding foam, and I won't have quite as much wastage next time. Although I am going to keep this in a little bag somewhere, as I feel like I might be able to use it for something else, so I will keep that for now. So I need to do quite a lot of work on the top here, because as you can see I've not got much space where that is, so I'm going to work on that just now. As an FYI, this video is more of a documentation of my process rather than a tutorial video. This is my first time doing something like this, so I wouldn't be comfortable sharing a tutorial at this point. Hopefully as I do more of these in the future, I'll be able to share proper tutorials with you, but for now this is just a little video for fun of me making my enclosure. Always do your research before getting your pets, and that includes enclosure builds and how to set up cages. So yeah, that's me finished my carving. I think I've done a pretty good job. Next time I would use a lot less foam. As you can see, I do have quite a lot of wastage. I'm going to keep these little bits and hopefully I'll be able to do something with them. But yeah, next time I definitely won't use as much. But I think I've done a pretty good job. I quite like it. I think it's good for a first time. And I am going to move on to my next step, which is to get the substrate onto this background to make it look a little bit more natural than it does at the moment. So we're going to be working on the messy bit now, which is why I've decided to come outside, because I don't want earth all over my kitchen and I don't want silicone all over my kitchen either. So we're going to be sticking on this eco earth, which is cocoa fibres with silicone, and this is aquarium grade silicone. Meaning it's not only safe for the animals, but it'll also be able to deal with moisture, which is important because most, if not all, species of mantis require slightly higher humidity than what you might have in your house. You'll need to mist their enclosures. So, put this on the ground just now. Oh, horrible squeaky noise. Okay. So I think we'll start up in this top corner and I'll maybe do it in sort of 6 sections. We'll see how it goes. Start by getting some silicone out. Okay. The simple concept of this is basically to smear the silicone all over the background and get as much covered as possible, and then to sprinkle the eco earth over the top, thus creating hopefully a quite natural looking background. And it's important to pick out black silicone because if there's any gaps in the substrate it's not quite as easy to see, whereas if you get clear or white or one of the lighter colours you can definitely see the gaps. So make sure you pick a black silicone if you're doing this. And please, please, please wear gloves and wear clothes that you don't really care about, because this stuff gets everywhere. And it doesn't come off your fingers and it does not come off your clothes, so make sure you wear protection. As this is aquarium grade silicone, it doesn't have the horrible vinegary smell that normal silicone has, which means that you should be able to do this indoors, but it's recommended to do it in a well ventilated area, and if like me it's during the summer, do it outside, because not only do you save the mess from being inside your house, but the smell from the silicone is much easier to deal with. And actually this stuff doesn't smell that bad. I've worked with other silicone in the past and it smells horrible, but aquarium grade silicone is not so bad. This is another really satisfying process. It's basically like finger painting but for adults. Or that's how I like to look at it anyway. I really enjoyed smearing the silicone all over the back of this piece, and it was nice to sprinkle on the eco earth as well. It really started to look like something as I began to do that, and it was nice to see the results happen so quickly. One tip that I picked up while I was doing this is it's great to leave it to dry completely and to save a little bit of earth just for the end bit. Once it's dried off, you can shake off the remaining bits of eco earth, and then you can really see any gaps that you've missed. So save a little bit of silicone and a little bit of earth just for that end. And you can add in little bits to the gaps and fill in all the gaps that you might have missed. That means you get a really full coverage with your silicone and your eco earth. And sometimes you don't see that while you're working, so it's great just to leave it right to the end and wait for everything to be dry. Another top tip is to make sure that your eco earth is completely dry. Most of the time you'll get it in a brick format, or you'll get it in a bag, in which case you have to add water to it to help it expand. You need to do this like a week or a few days at least before you do this process, because otherwise it won't have time to dry out. I actually dried mine out in the oven. If you leave it in the oven on a low heat for a while, it will dry out and it's perfect to use. But if it's wet, it won't stick to the silicone, so you need to make sure that it's dry. So now with this base finished, or the background even, as you can see it's all completely done, we are going to move on to actually sorting out the enclosure. So first off, I'm going to remove all the substrate, but I'm going to keep it in this bucket because it's got springtails in it and I want to reuse it because it's still perfectly good. I'm actually just going to use this ladle because I feel like it might be a lot easier than just using my hand, so bear with me. And as I go through it, I'm going to check in any bits that maybe have mould in it or are not as good. I will put in that bucket to throw out. But I think on the whole it should be okay. I haven't seen any signs of mould. But I will check through each bit just to make sure that there is nothing wrong with it. By the way, if you're using random kitchen implements like I am to do your projects, make sure you give them a really good wash before you use them in your kitchen again. Or if you're like me, just have a random set of kitchen implements that you use for random art projects like this. Sometimes the most random of tools become the best tools, and I end up saving like lots of random kitchen tools in my art drawer because they're so useful. But yeah, if you are going to put your tools back in your kitchen, make sure you wash them. Also, apologies for the slightly dodgy lighting in these next few clips. My light wasn't working and I thought the light was a lot better than it looks, but now that I've uploaded my footage it's not that great, so sorry it's a little bit dark. I'll work on that for my next video. Now that we're working with a pretty clean enclosure, I am going to start to reassemble. So first step is to pop in the background, which might be easier said than done. I'll put it in through the top. And yeah, sorry for those noises in the background, that's the rats. I'm doing this in the kitchen because it's the only table space that I have, so any little noises that you hear in the background, probably the rat boys. Oh, horrible noise. Okay. That looks pretty good. It's not all the way back. Oh, not back. I'm pleased with how it's turned out and I think it looks pretty good. I think it'll look even better with plants in it. So there is some earth in my clay balls. I couldn't manage to get all of it out, so I'm going to try my best to just get the clay balls and not the earth, but I think there'll probably end up being a little bit that'll end up going back. I did try and get most of it out, but there is just a little bit still in there. Also, the random sped up voice that you hear is me talking to the rats. I'm telling them to be quiet, but obviously that doesn't work because they're rats. They do what they want. Drainage layers are really important in a setup like this because they provide a layer for any little bits of excess water to sit. Because if it just sat in the substrate, the bottom of the substrate would go all like the water would go all stagnant and the substrate would go mouldy. Whereas these allow the water to sit in a place that's not going to end up stagnant or end up mouldy, and the water will be re-evaporated through the substrate. And I'm going to put a layer of charcoal on this time to clean it as it comes back up. I don't want to use all of it because I want to put some in with my plants to purify that water. Preferably I would have bought slightly bigger charcoal chunks. I bought these smaller ones sort of by mistake, but they will do the same job. Perfect. And I will keep the rest of this for my plants. So next we're going to add in the rest of the substrate. So my substrate is a mixture of natural cocoa fibres as well as sphagnum moss and a little bit of leaf litter as well. The cocoa fibre and the sphagnum moss together will provide a really great layer of substrate for capturing moisture, and the little bit of leaf litter is for a little bit of added texture and some food for my cleanup crew. So in my cleanup crew I'm using springtails and I'm also using tropical grey woodlice, which are also known as isopods. So both of these little janitorial insects will be cleaning up the bottom of my substrate. It's really important to have a cleanup crew in a bioactive setup because they are basically what keeps your enclosure clean. It's a good layer of substrate. Happy with that. Okay. Now the last things that I will be doing is adding in the sticks and adding in the plants, but I don't have my plants yet, so I'm going to save that for later. Yep, now it's later. I'm just back from the Birmingham Entomological Fair where I picked up my plants. If you've not already seen that video, I will leave a link down in the description and you can check that out. I made a little vlog about my trip where I picked up these plants and where I picked up the little mantis that you're about to see. So my first step was to create small little drainage layers for my plants in the pots, and that would mean that the water in there wouldn't go stagnant. It's basically the same as the drainage layer that I used for the bottom, but with slightly smaller bits of gravel for the bottom of my plant pots. So I bought 3 kinds of plants, and I'm hoping that they will grow and that I will manage to keep them alive. I don't have a great green thumb. I am known to kill plants, and although I've managed to keep my little collection of cactus alive for a while, I've not really done that great with any other plants. So fingers crossed this will be the one that I can manage to keep alive and they'll manage to thrive in my enclosure. Fingers crossed, wish me luck. If you have any tips for a plant killer, please help me out. After placing the plants where I wanted them and giving them a quick mist, I then started to put back the sticks that I had in Gamora's enclosure. I rebaked them in the oven even though I didn't think I really needed to, but I just wanted to give them a little bit of a chance to sterilise. So if you're bringing in sticks from the outside, make sure you sterilise them. There's a few different ways to do this, but I think the most effective way is probably to put them in the oven and bake them. So stick them on a baking tray and stick them in your oven on a low heat, something around 100 degrees. And it'll kill any bacteria, any parasites, and any mould that could be present in the sticks. So I played around with the sticks for a little while and tried to get the best composition for the aesthetics and how it looked, but also to make sure that my mantis would be able to climb from each individual stick and get onto the other ones. But also so there was enough gaps so when my mantis molts, there's enough space for them to hang upside down and complete their molt without any problems. At the moment my enclosure does look a little bit bare because the plants are still quite small, but I'm hoping as they grow it'll start to look a lot fuller and it'll be a lot more finished. If you checked out my last video, I asked you to guess what was in the little pot. I wonder if you guessed correctly. This is Nebula, my new giant shield mantis. I'm not sure if she is a she or a he at this point. I'm hoping for a female because they tend to get a bit bigger and they live longer as well, but at the moment, not sure. Hopefully within a few months I'll be able to tell if he's a male or a female. I decided to name this little guy Nebula because my first mantis was called Gamora, so I'm continuing the theme of Guardians of the Galaxy with this one. So Nebula is a giant shield mantis, or a Rhombodera basilis. Hopefully I've pronounced that correctly. All of the specimens in the Rhombodera genus are large and native throughout Asia, and they're known to possess some kind of shield or extended leaf-shaped thorax, hence their name. As the giant shield mantises are native to the more humid areas of Asia, such as Thailand, they'll do best at temperatures between 20 and 30 degrees Celsius, and the humidity should be kept between 60 and 80%. Unlike Gamora, who I got as a sub-adult, this time I went for a nymph, and Nebula is an L3 nymph, which means she's been through her third shed. At this stage, he'll only be eating melanogaster or Heidi fruit flies, and eventually I want to get him up to small cockroaches and blue bottle flies, as well as some locusts. As soon as she's able to eat small locusts or cockroaches from tongs, I can move her into my big enclosure. At this stage though, he's in a little jar until he grows a little bit bigger and I can safely put him into the Exo Terra and be able to tong feed and make sure that I don't lose her. So yeah, meet Nebula. I'm really in love with her already. She's so tiny and adorable, and I didn't realise how much quicker the nymphs were to the adults. She moves around so fast. I'm really excited for her to grow up and move into the Exo Terra, and hopefully by then the plants will have grown a lot as well and it'll be a lot more finished. For now, I hope you've enjoyed seeing my enclosure upgrade, and I hope you've enjoyed meeting Nebula. Make sure to hit that subscribe button to see more videos from us in the future, and if you want to see Nebula grow up. I'm also on Instagram and Twitter, so follow the links below and you can follow us there too, where I'll be sure to post lots of updates on Nebula's progress. Thank you so much for watching. That's all from us for now. Fluffy Jellyfish out.